Korean Mafia boss watched his ex push his pregnant wife into a pool. What he did next shocked everyone. The champagne glass shattered against marble. A woman's scream pierced through the laughter and jazz music. Then, a splash that silenced 300 guests in an instant. Jae-woo stood frozen at the edge of the illuminated pool, watching his pregnant wife sink beneath the turquoise water. Her white evening gown billowed around her like a parachute before it became heavy, dragging her down. Her arms flailed. Her mouth opened in a silent gasp underwater. The baby, their unborn daughter, 8 months along. Everyone turned to look at him. The husband, the man who should be screaming, diving, exploding with rage. Instead, Jae-woo smiled. It was a small smile, cold, calculated. The kind of smile that once made grown men in Seoul's underground weep before they disappeared forever. And standing 5 feet away from the pool's edge, manicured hands still extended from the push, was the woman he thought he'd buried in his past. Yuna, his ex-lover. The woman who had stolen $5 million and left him for dead 7 years ago. She was smiling too. This is the story of what happened that night. And what happened next shocked everyone who witnessed it. But to understand why a mafia boss smiled while his pregnant wife drowned, you need to understand who he really was. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. 3 years before that night, Jae-woo was known by a different name in Seoul's criminal underworld. They called him the Surgeon because his methods were precise, clean, methodical. He didn't waste bullets or make messes. When someone crossed the Biko clan, they simply ceased to exist. No bodies, no witnesses, no mistakes. He ran the largest smuggling operation in South Korea. Art, weapons, information, if it needed to disappear from one country and reappear in another, it went through Jae-woo's network. He had politicians in his pocket, police commissioners on his payroll, judges who owed him favors they could never repay. But he was tired of looking over his shoulder, tired of sleeping with a gun under his pillow, tired of attending funerals for men half his age who died because they made stupid mistakes or trusted the wrong people. He was 33 years old and felt 70. Then he met Sora. She was a kindergarten teacher. She wore floral dresses and smiled at strangers. She cried at sad movies and laughed at terrible jokes. She knew nothing about his world. When she looked at him, she didn't see the surgeon. She saw Jae-woo, just Jae-woo, a man who opened doors for her and listened when she talked about her students and held her hand like she was made of something precious. For the first time in 15 years, Jae-woo wanted to be someone else. So he made a deal. He traded his empire for his freedom. He gave up his territories, his networks, his power. He paid off everyone who needed paying. He erased his identity and created a new one. Park Jae-woo became Lee Mi-ho, a quiet art consultant who traveled for work and kept to himself. He married Sora 6 months later. She never asked about his past and he never told her. She believed he was a man who restored paintings for wealthy collectors. She believed his scars came from a car accident. She believed the nightmares that woke him up screaming were just stress. And she loved him anyway. When she told him she was pregnant, Jae-woo cried. Real tears. The kind he hadn't shed since he was 12 years old watching his father's funeral from behind a tree because he was too afraid to be seen. He put his hand on Sora's still flat belly and made a promise. This child would never know his old world. This child would have the childhood he never had. This child would be safe. For 8 months he kept that promise. Then came the charity gala. The event was hosted by the Seoul Foundation for Children's Education. Sora had been invited because of her work with underprivileged students. She was so excited. She bought a new dress, white and flowing to accommodate her pregnant belly. She practiced her speech in front of the bathroom mirror. Jae-woo didn't want to go. Large crowds made him nervous. Too many faces. Too many variables. But Sora's eyes were so bright with happiness that he couldn't say no. The gala was held at a mansion in Gangnam. Old money, new money, political money. Everyone who was anyone in Seoul's elite circles was there. Crystal chandeliers hung from 30-foot ceilings. Ice sculptures shaped like swans slowly melted on tables laden with imported caviar and French champagne. A string quartet played Vivaldi in the corner while guests in designer clothes pretended to care about children's education. Jaiwoo hated it immediately, but Sora glowed. She moved through the crowd with her hand resting on her belly, smiling and introducing herself to strangers. Jaiwoo stayed close, scanning faces out of habit, looking for threats, looking for anyone who might recognize him under the new name and respectable clothes. That's when he saw her. Yuna. She stood near the bar, wearing a black dress that probably cost more than most people's cars. Her hair was shorter now, styled in an expensive cut. Diamonds glittered at her throat and wrists. She was laughing at something a politician was saying, her hand resting possessively on his arm. Jaiwoo's blood turned to ice. Yuna was supposed to be dead. He'd heard the rumors 7 years ago. She'd betrayed him to a rival gang, stolen money from his accounts, and disappeared. 3 months later, someone told him they'd found a body in Busan. Female, same age, same build, burned beyond recognition. He'd assumed it was her, hoped it was her, let himself believe his past was truly buried. But here she was, alive, wealthy, powerful, and looking directly at him. Their eyes met across the crowded room. Recognition flashed in her face. Then something else. Calculation, curiosity, and underneath it all, hunger. If you're enjoying the story so far, hit that like button and let us know what you think Jaiwoo should do next in the comments. Should he confront her? Or pretend he doesn't recognize her? Drop your thoughts below. Jaiwoo turned away, his heart pounding. He needed to leave. Now, before Yuna could approach, before she could say anything to Sora, before his carefully constructed life collapsed around him. But Sora was in the middle of a conversation with the event coordinator, discussing a potential partnership between the foundation and her school. She was animated, passionate, beautiful. Jaiwoo couldn't drag her away without explanation. He felt Yuna's presence before he heard her voice. Jaiwoo, she said softly, right behind him. Or should I call you Miho now? He didn't turn around. You should call me nothing. You should pretend you never saw me. Where's the fun in that? She moved to stand beside him, close enough that he could smell her perfume. The same one she'd worn 7 years ago. Expensive, cloying. I see you've done well for yourself. New identity. Pretty wife. And is that a baby bump I noticed? Stay away from her. Yuna laughed. The sound was light, musical, completely at odds with the threat in her eyes. Relax. I'm not going to expose you. I have just as much to lose as you do. I've built a very comfortable life here. Important friends. Legitimate businesses. She paused. Well, mostly legitimate. Then we have nothing to discuss. Oh, I think we do. She sipped her champagne, her gaze drifting to where Sora stood talking. She's lovely. So innocent. Does she know what you are? What you've done? No. And she never will. How romantic. Yuna's smile sharpened. You always did have a sentimental streak. I remember when you used to look at me like that. Before I got too smart for my own good. You stole from me. You tried to have me killed. And yet here you are, thriving. So really, I did you a favor. She turned to face him fully. I'm hosting this event, you know. The Seoul Foundation. I'm the primary donor. I've reinvented myself too, Jaiwoo. I'm a philanthropist now. A respected member of society. Isn't it funny how we both ended up here? Hilarious. I want to talk to her. Yuna gestured toward Sora. Your wife. She seems so sweet. I'd love to hear about her work with children. No, it wasn't a request. Yuna's voice dropped, losing its playful edge. You don't get to tell me no anymore. Not in my house. Not at my event. I'm gonna walk over there and I'm gonna introduce myself and you're gonna stand there and smile. Because if you don't, I might accidentally let something slip about your past. Maybe to her. Maybe to the police. Maybe to some of your old enemies who would love to know where the surgeon has been hiding. Jaiwoo's hands curled into fists at his sides. Every instinct screamed at him to eliminate the threat. To handle Yuna the way he would have handled her 7 years ago. Quickly. Permanently. But that wasn't who he was anymore. He'd left that life behind. He had a wife. A child on the way. He couldn't go back. 5 minutes, he said quietly. Then you leave her alone. Deal. They walked toward Sora together. Jaiwoo wanted to throw his body between them, to shield his wife from the venom he knew Yuna was capable of spitting. But Sora was already turning toward them, her face lighting up with a smile. There you are, Sora said, reaching for Jaiwoo's hand. I was wondering where you'd gone. I ran into an old acquaintance, Jaiwoo said carefully. Sora, this is Yuna Park. She's the Foundation's primary donor. Yuna, this is my wife, Sora. It's so wonderful to meet you, Yuna said, her smile warm and completely fake. Your husband and I go way back. We used to work together. Really? Sora looked delighted. Miho never talks about his old colleagues. What field were you in? Import-export, Yuna said smoothly. Very boring business stuff. But your work sounds much more interesting. Teaching children, that must be so rewarding. They talked for exactly 5 minutes. Yuna asked questions about Sora's students, her teaching philosophy, her pregnancy. She was charming, engaging, every word laced with poison that only Jaiwoo could taste. She complimented Sora's dress. She touched Sora's arm in a gesture of female camaraderie. She laughed at Sora's stories, and all the while her eyes kept flicking to Jaiwoo, watching his reaction, enjoying his discomfort. When 5 minutes were up, Yuna excused herself gracefully. I should circulate, host duties. But Sora, would you join me by the pool in about 20 minutes? I'd love to introduce you to some board members who might be interested in partnering with your school. I'd love that, Sora said. Jaiwoo's stomach dropped. Actually, Sora's been on her feet for a while. Maybe she should rest. I'm fine, Sora assured him, squeezing his hand. Don't be so overprotective. This could be a great opportunity for the kids. Yuna smiled. 20 minutes. By the pool. She walked away, her black dress swaying. Jaiwoo watched her go, every nerve in his body screaming danger. She seems nice, Sora said. Jaiwoo didn't answer. He was calculating, planning, trying to figure out what Yuna was really after. Money? Revenge? Or was she just bored? Amusing herself by tormenting him? He knew her, knew how her mind worked. Yuna never did anything without a reason. Every move was strategic. The next 15 minutes crawled by. Jaiwoo stayed glued to Sora's side as she networked with other guests. He barely heard the conversations. His attention was split between watching the clock and searching the crowd for Yuna. She was everywhere. Greeting guests, posing for photos, playing the perfect hostess. But her eyes kept finding him. Watching. Waiting. When 20 minutes had passed, Sora excused herself from a conversation with a school superintendent. I should go meet Yuna by the pool. Will you come with me? Yes. They made their way through the mansion toward the back terrace. French doors opened onto a sprawling outdoor space with a pool that glowed blue-green in the darkness. Fairy lights were strung overhead. Heaters kept the autumn chill at bay. About 30 guests were scattered around the area, drinking and talking. Yuna stood near the pool's edge, talking to a small group of well-dressed board members. She saw Sora approaching and waved her over with a bright smile. What happened next took less than 5 seconds. Yuna was introducing Sora to a woman in a red dress. Sora stepped forward to shake her hand. Yuna said something Jaiwoo couldn't hear what. Sora laughed, leaned slightly forward, and Yuna pushed her. It wasn't a hard push, just a small movement of her hand against Sora's shoulder. But Sora was off balance. Leaning forward, 8 months pregnant with her center of gravity shifted. She stumbled, tried to catch herself, failed. She fell backward into the pool. The splash seemed impossibly loud. Water erupted. Sora went under, her white dress billowing around her. Jaiwoo saw her face through the water. Eyes wide with shock, mouth open, hands reaching up. Time slowed down. Every person on the terrace turned to look. Someone screamed. Someone else shouted for help. Yuna's hand flew to her mouth in perfectly performed shock. "Oh my God!" she cried. It was an accident. She tripped, but Jaiwoo saw the truth in her eyes. The triumph, the malice. This wasn't an accident. This was a message. A reminder that Yuna could take away everything he loved whenever she wanted. And everyone was watching him now, watching to see what he would do, how the devoted husband would react to seeing his pregnant wife drowning. Make sure you're subscribed and have notifications turned on because this story is about to take a turn nobody saw coming. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. Jaiwoo removed his jacket. Slowly, methodically. He folded it once and handed it to the nearest guest. Then he removed his watch, his phone. He placed them carefully on a nearby table. The whole time, his eyes never left Sora's struggling form in the water. Someone was already diving in. A young man in a suit who'd reacted faster than Jaiwoo. He pulled Sora to the surface. She coughed and gasped, water streaming from her hair and clothes. Other hands reached down to help pull her out. Only then did Jaiwoo move. He walked to the pool's edge, jumped in with barely a splash. The water was cold, but he barely felt it. He swam to where Sora was being lifted out and helped push her up from below. Then he pulled himself out with one smooth motion. Sora was on her hands and knees on the tile, coughing up water. Her dress clung to her skin. Her hair was plastered to her face. She was shaking, from cold or shock. Jaiwoo couldn't tell. He knelt beside her, put his hand on her back. "Are you okay? The baby?" She nodded, still coughing. I think we're okay. What happened? Did I trip?" "You tripped," Jaiwoo confirmed. He looked up at Yuna, who was being comforted by concerned guests. She looked genuinely distressed. Oscar-worthy performance. "I'm so sorry," Yuna said, tears actually forming in her eyes. She stepped back, and I thought she was just turning, but she lost her balance. I tried to grab her, but it's not your fault, Jaiwoo said. The words surprised everyone, including Yuna. She stared at him, trying to read his expression. Jaiwoo stood, helped Sora to her feet. Someone handed him a towel, and he wrapped it around his wife's shoulders. She was still shaking. "We should get you to a hospital," he said quietly. "Make sure everything's okay." "I'm fine," Sora insisted, but her voice wavered. "Really, I just got scared, but I felt the baby kick." "She's okay. Hospital anyway." "Okay." Jaiwoo started to lead Sora toward the house, but he paused, turned back to Yuna. She watched him warily, perhaps expecting him to lash out now that Sora wasn't looking, to reveal some hint of the violence he was capable of. Instead, he smiled at her, that same cold smile from the beginning, the one that used to make men beg for mercy. Then he walked over to Yuna, pulled her into a hug. She stiffened against him, confused. "What are you?" "Thank you," Jaiwoo whispered in her ear, so quietly only she could hear, "for reminding me who I am." He pulled back, smiled again for the benefit of the watching guests. "Thank you for trying to catch her. These things happen. No hard feelings." Yuna's confusion turned to suspicion. This wasn't the reaction she'd expected. Where was the rage? The threats? The violence? But Jaiwoo just took Sora's hand and walked away. They drove to the hospital in silence. Sora dozed in the passenger seat, exhausted from shock. Jaiwoo kept his eyes on the road and his hands steady on the wheel. But his mind was racing. At the hospital, doctors confirmed that Sora and the baby were fine. No injuries, no complications, just a scare. They kept her overnight for observation anyway. Jaiwoo sat in a chair beside her bed while she slept, watching the rise and fall of her chest, the monitor showing their daughter's steady heartbeat. At 2 a.m., he stepped into the hallway, pulled out his phone, made a single call to a number he'd promised himself he'd never use again. A man answered on the first ring. His voice was rough with sleep. "This number is disconnected." It was a code, a way of confirming identity. "The surgeon is back in practice," Jaiwoo said. Silence. Then, "I thought you were retired. One last operation. Target. Unipark. I need everything. Financial records, business dealings, personal connections, criminal activities, skeletons in closets. Everything. When? Now. It'll be expensive. I don't care. And messy." "No," Jaiwoo said. "Clean. Legal. I want her destroyed, but I want her to see it coming. I want her to understand exactly who did it to her. And I want it done without a single drop of blood." Another pause, then a low chuckle. "The surgeon getting creative in his old age? Can you do it? For you? Always. Give me 72 hours. The line went dead. Jaiwoo went back to Sora's room, sat down in his chair, watched his wife sleep. His old life and his new life had collided tonight. For 8 months he'd managed to keep them separate. But Yuna had shattered that illusion. She'd proven that his past could still hurt the people he loved. So he would handle it the way he used to, with precision, with planning, with absolute ruthlessness. But this time he'd do it right. If the story has you hooked, do us a favor and smash that like button. And drop a comment telling us if you think Yuna deserves what's coming. We read every single comment. The next morning, Sora was released from the hospital. She was quiet on the drive home, staring out the window at the Seoul traffic. Jaiwoo glanced at her every few minutes, checking for signs of distress. Finally, she spoke. "That wasn't an accident, was it?" Jaiwoo's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "What makes you say that?" "I saw her face, right before she pushed me. It was only for a second, but..." Sora trailed off. "She looked happy, like she wanted to hurt me." "Why would she want to hurt you? She doesn't even know you." "No, but she knows you." Sora turned to look at him. "Who is she really, Miho? And don't lie to me. I'm not stupid. The way you looked at her last night, you were afraid. I've never seen you afraid of anything." Jaiwoo was silent for a long moment. They were stopped at a red light. He could feel Sora's eyes on him, waiting. "We used to work together," he said finally. "A long time ago, before I met you. She's not a good person, Sora. We had a falling out. It ended badly." "How badly?" "Badly enough that I thought I'd never see her again. And now she's seen that I have something to lose." Jaiwoo reached over and took Sora's hand. "But I won't let her hurt you, or our daughter. I promise." Sora squeezed his fingers. "I'm scared. I know. But you don't need to be. I'm going to handle this." "How?" "You don't need to worry about that. Miho, trust me." She looked at him for a long time. Jaiwoo could see the questions in her eyes, the doubts, the growing realization that her husband wasn't who she thought he was. But she was also 8 months pregnant and exhausted and still shaken from nearly drowning. So she nodded. "Okay, I trust you." They drove the rest of the way home in silence. For the next 3 days, life continued normally on the surface. Sora stayed home from work, resting. Jaiwoo played the attentive husband, cooking meals, running errands, pretending everything was fine. But every night after Sora fell asleep, he worked. The information came in waves. Financial records, business licenses, property deeds, security footage, phone records, email chains. Every piece of Yuna's carefully constructed life, laid out in digital files on Jaiwoo's laptop. What he found was damning. Yuna had reinvented herself as a philanthropist, yes, but her fortune hadn't come from legitimate business. She'd built an empire on the backs of illegal activities. Money laundering through her charity foundation, human trafficking disguised as employment agencies, blackmail of wealthy clients at her exclusive networking events. She'd gotten smarter since their time together, more sophisticated. She'd learned from her mistakes, built layers of protection between herself and the crimes, used other people's names on documents, kept herself clean on the surface. But Jaiwoo had learned a few things too. He spent those 3 days building a case, not for himself, for the authorities. He compiled evidence, connected dots, created a paper trail so clear that even the most corrupt official couldn't ignore it. He identified witnesses, found victims willing to testify, located bank accounts in the Cayman Islands, shell companies in Singapore, properties purchased under false names. And then he packaged it all up with a bow. On the 4th day after the gala, Jaiwoo made another call, this time to a prosecutor he'd once helped put in office. A clean prosecutor, one of the rare ones who actually cared about justice. I have something for you, Jaiwoo said. Who is this? An old friend, or maybe an old enemy. Depends on your perspective. Either way, I have information about a major criminal operation. Money laundering, human trafficking, high-level corruption. All of it documented. Provable. Why are you calling me? Because you're one of the few people in this city who might actually do something with it. Send it to the tip line. No. I need to know this gets handled properly. And quickly. Lives are at stake. There was a long pause. What's in it for you? Justice. Isn't that what you're supposed to be about? Nobody does this for free. Consider it a public service. Another pause. Then, send me what you have. I'll take a look. Jaiwoo sent the files. All 73 gigabytes of incriminating evidence. Then he sat back and waited. Took 6 hours. At 3 p.m., prosecutor's office issued warrants. At 4 p.m., they coordinated with the Financial Crimes Unit. At 5 p.m., they froze Yuna's assets. All of them. Every bank account, every property, every investment. In one afternoon, her entire fortune became inaccessible. At 6 p.m., they started making arrests. Not Yuna. Not yet. First, they went after her associates. The people she'd used to insulate herself. Her accountant. Her lawyer. Her business partners. One by one, they were picked up for questioning. And one by one, faced with overwhelming evidence and the possibility of lengthy prison sentences, they started talking. By midnight, they had enough to arrest Yuna herself. Jaiwoo watched it all unfold on the news. He and Sora sat on the couch, her head resting on his shoulder. The reporter's voice filled their living room. Breaking news tonight as prominent philanthropist and socialite Yuna Park has been arrested on charges of money laundering, fraud, and human trafficking. The Seoul prosecutor's office says they received a tip 4 days ago that led to a sweeping investigation. Sora sat up. That's her. The woman from the gala. Yes. How is this possible? She seems so successful. So legitimate. People aren't always what they seem. Sora looked at him. Really looked at him. No. I suppose they're not. Before you find out what happens next, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. This channel brings you the most captivating stories every week, and you don't want to miss a single one. The arrest made headlines for weeks. As more evidence emerged, The scope of Yuna's crimes became clear. She'd been operating for 7 years, ever since she'd disappeared from Jaiwoo's life. She'd taken the money she'd stolen from him and built an empire. Hundreds of victims, millions of dollars laundered, lives destroyed. The trial was swift. With so much evidence, there was no point in fighting. Yuna's lawyers advised her to take a plea deal. 25 years in prison. No possibility of parole. She took it. Jaiwoo didn't attend the trial. He watched it on television like everyone else. He saw Yuna in her orange jumpsuit, her expensive haircut growing out, her manicured nails chipped and broken. She looked small, ordinary, human. He felt nothing. 2 weeks after Yuna's sentencing, Sora went into labor. It was early morning. They barely made it to the hospital. Jaiwoo held Sora's hand through 16 hours of labor, letting her squeeze until his fingers went numb. He whispered encouragement, wiped her forehead, told her how strong she was. When their daughter finally arrived, screaming and red-faced and perfect, Jaiwoo cried. They named her Mina. It meant beautiful. Holding his daughter for the first time, Jaiwoo made a promise. He would never let his old life touch her. She would grow up safe, loved, protected. She would never know what her father used to be. That night, while Sora and Mina slept, Jaiwoo stood by the hospital window looking out at Seoul's skyline, the city where he'd built an empire and destroyed lives and become something monstrous. The city where he'd also found redemption. His phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Heard you're a father now. Congratulations. Your debt is paid. It was from his old contact, the one who'd helped him gather the evidence on Yuna. Jaiwoo stared at the message for a long time. Then he deleted it, turned off his phone, dropped it in the trash. He didn't need it anymore. A month later, Sora finally asked the question Jaiwoo had been waiting for. They were having breakfast. Mina was asleep in her bassinet. Morning sunlight streamed through the windows. It should have been a peaceful moment. Who were you? Sora asked quietly. Before you were Miho? Jaiwoo set down his coffee. Does it matter? Yes. Why? Because I need to know who I married. Who the father of my child is. I've been patient. I've trusted you. But after everything with Yuna, I deserve the truth. She was right. She did deserve the truth. Jaiwoo had known this moment would come eventually. He'd hoped it would be later, after Mina was older, after enough time had passed that his past felt truly buried. But Sora was looking at him with determined eyes, and he realized she'd been patient long enough. I was a criminal, he said, a very successful one. I ran a smuggling operation. I worked with dangerous people. I did things I'm not proud of. Did you kill people? Jaiwoo hesitated. Not directly, but people died because of decisions I made. Orders I gave. Sora was quiet for a long moment. Her tea grew cold in front of her. Finally, she spoke. And Yuna? We were together. She betrayed me, stole from me. I thought she died, but she didn't. When she saw me at the gala, saw that I had a new life, a wife, a baby coming, she wanted to destroy it. She wanted me to suffer. So you destroyed her first. I made sure she paid for her crimes. All of them. Not just what she did to me, but what she did to hundreds of other people. She was still hurting people, Sora. Still ruining lives. I stopped her. How? I gathered evidence. I gave it to the authorities. I let the system handle it. That's not what you would have done before, is it? In your old life? No. What would you have done? Jaiwoo looked at his wife, at her kind eyes and gentle face, at the woman who'd made him want to be better. Something terrible, he said quietly. Something I would have regretted. But you didn't. No. Because of you. Because of Mina. Because I'm not that person anymore. Sora reached across the table and took his hand. Are we safe? Is anyone from your past going to come after us? No. I made sure of it before we got married. I paid off debts, settled accounts, erased myself from that world. Yuna was the only loose end, and now she's in prison for the next 25 years. And you're sure? I'm sure. Sora nodded slowly. She didn't let go of his hand. I should be angry. I should be furious that you lied to me, that you kept this from me. I know, but I'm not. Because you're a good man, Miho. Or Jaiwu. Whoever you are. You're a good husband. You're going to be a good father. And everyone has a past. Some are just darker than others. You're not afraid of me? Should I be? Jaiwu thought about the man he used to be. The surgeon. Cold. Ruthless. Efficient. Then he thought about the man he'd become. The one who cried at his daughter's birth. Who made breakfast and changed diapers and read parenting books at 3 a.m. No, he said. You shouldn't be. Then I'm not. They sat in silence for a while. Mina stirred in her bassinet, making small sounds. Sora got up to check on her. Jaiwu watched his wife lift their daughter, watched the way Mina's tiny hand curled around Sora's finger. This was what he'd fought for. This quiet morning. This ordinary life. This second chance. 2 years later, Jaiwu received a letter. Came to their new apartment. They'd moved 6 months ago to a quieter neighborhood. Somewhere with good schools for when Mina got older. Somewhere far from the life Jaiwu used to live. The letter was from Yuna. He almost threw it away without reading it. Almost. But curiosity got the better of him. He opened it while Sora was out with Mina at the park. The handwriting was neater than he remembered. Prison had given her time to practice. Jaiwu, I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from. I almost didn't write this. But I've had 2 years to think about what happened. About what I did. To you. To your wife. To so many other people. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I understand now. You didn't destroy me. I destroyed myself. Every choice I made after I left you led me here. You just made sure I couldn't run away from the consequences anymore. I used to hate you for that. For the first year, I spent every day planning revenge. How I'd get out early for good behavior. How I'd find you again. How I'd make you pay. But then I met a woman here. Another inmate. She was trafficked by one of my operations. Sold to a factory where she worked 18-hour days in conditions I can't even describe. She escaped. Testified against me. When I realized who she was, I expected her to attack me. To hurt me the way I'd hurt her. But she just looked at me and said, I hope you learn to live with yourself. That broke something in me. Made me see all the faces I'd been trying not to see. All the lives I'd destroyed because I was greedy and angry and convinced that the world owed me something. You could have killed me, Jaiwu. The man you used to be would have. But you didn't. You gave me something worse than death. You gave me time to understand what I'd become. Your wife must be an incredible woman to have changed you so much. Your daughter too, I assume. I hope they never know what we were. What we did. They deserve better. We both got what we deserved in the end. You got a family. I got a cell. Maybe in another life we could have been different people. Better people. But probably not. Why? Jaiwu read the letter 3 times. Then he burned it in the kitchen sink. Watched the paper curl and blacken. Washed the ashes down the drain. When Sora came home, Mina was chattering about the ducks they'd seen at the park. She was 2 now, talking in full sentences, laughing at everything. She ran to Jaiwu and threw her arms around his legs. Daddy, we saw 8 ducks. 8. 8 ducks? That's so many ducks. And one was a baby. A baby duck. Was it cute? So cute. Sora smiled at them from the doorway. She counted them herself. Every single duck. She's brilliant, Jaiwu said, lifting Mina into his arms. Just like her mom. That night, after Mina was asleep and Sora was in the shower, Jaiwoo stood in his daughter's doorway watching her sleep. She was sprawled across her tiny bed, one arm thrown over her head, completely at peace. He thought about the letter, about Yuna in prison, learning to live with her choices, about the man he used to be and the man he'd become, about how thin the line was between the two. But then Mina stirred and murmured something in her sleep, probably about ducks, and Jaiwoo smiled. Some people said the past always caught up with you, that you couldn't escape who you really were, that violence bred violence and darkness bred darkness. But standing in his daughter's doorway in his modest apartment in a quiet neighborhood, listening to his wife hum in the shower, Jaiwoo knew they were wrong. The past didn't have to define you. You could choose to be someone different, someone better. It wasn't easy. It required sacrifice and vigilance and the constant choice to be the person you wanted to be rather than the person you used to be. But it was possible. He'd proven that. The most dangerous man isn't the one who kills. The most dangerous man is the one who knows when not to. The one who chooses mercy when violence would be easier. The one who walks away from power when power is all he's ever known. That was true strength. That was true power. And Jaiwoo had it now. If the story moved you, we'd love to hear about it in the comments. What would you have done in Jaiwoo's position? Would you have chosen violence or the long game? Let us know your thoughts. And if you enjoyed the story, make sure you're subscribed to our channel for more compelling narratives every week. Hit that like button, share this with someone who loves a good revenge story, and we'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching until the very end. You're amazing.